Well, everyone, I found myself wondering who have I not reviewed in a review yet in terms of an actor or an actress? Because usually what I do before doing these reviews, I look up actors or actresses that I really like and appreciate because usually the actor makes movies great. And I thought, well, I haven't done a review with Bette Davis yet. And to me personally, I think Bette Davis is the greatest actress of all time. Of course, you may have a different opinion. I know Joan Crawford fans probably would definitely disagree with me. But to me, I just think Bette Davis has something remarkably amazing and special about her. I've never seen a movie where she does a poor job or just a job where she doesn't do an outstanding job, really. Well, tonight's movie is The Virgin Queen. It came out in 1955. It stars, of course, Bette Davis, Richard Todd, and Joan Collins, a young Joan Collins. And it's important to note that, well, in this movie she's playing Queen Elizabeth I. And it's important to note that she had previously played Queen Elizabeth I with this guy, Errol Flynn, in The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex. And sadly, that is a movie that I have not seen, and the reason why I haven't seen it is because I can't find it anywhere. I've tried the library, I've tried online, and I'm sure I could buy it, but not really too into doing that. But it has Errol Flynn and Bette Davis, and I'm dying to see it, and this movie made me even want to see it even more. But anyways, so the plot of this movie is, it's about Sir Walter Raleigh. And if you remember from your history classes, Sir Walter Raleigh was the guy from England who went over to the New World and popularized tobacco in Europe. Of course, none of that is discussed in this movie because this movie is mainly completely about Sir Walter Raleigh's relationship with Queen Elizabeth I, which it was actually really interesting. And there is a love triangle in this movie, of course. At the time, Queen Elizabeth I was quite old, so it's not like she can really have a true romance with Sir Walter Raleigh, but she does have some sort of love and affection for him. But she realizes she's getting old and she's not as beautiful as she used to be. And Joan Collins is one of her handmaidens, and she gets really jealous because she notices that she has something with Sir Walter Raleigh, and she forbids him from doing anything with her. And so there's this love triangle going on, and there's a lot of drama that I won't get into. But he is an ambitious soldier, and he really, really wants to go to the New World. He wants these ships, but for the time being, he has to work his way into that. So he becomes the Queen's right-hand guard. He's the head of the guards, and he's kind of this lapdog. In fact, Joan Collins' character really teases him about this, and I really have to say that Joan Collins was probably one of the worst actresses I've seen from back in the day. Now, I know this was early in her career. I haven't actually seen any of her movies before, but I don't know if I want to see any more after seeing this one. But she was, of course, pretty. But I have to say that her voice sounded like a 10-year-old girl. And maybe it was because Bette Davis was in the movie, and it really, really contrasted with Joan Collins' acting. It just really made it look even worse, maybe. But I just thought Joan Collins was tremendously bad. But Richard Todd, on the other hand, he was great. I haven't seen him in another movie before. I know he's in a Hitchcock movie. I think it's Stage Fright. I haven't seen that, but this movie makes me want to see it. But Richard Todd and Bette Davis really have so much electricity going on between them in their scenes. There's so many sparks flying, like especially when they're fighting and arguing, and it's just incredible to watch them go back and forth. And she's really bipolar in this movie, as she is in a lot of her movies, where she'll just scream her head off at him, and then a few scenes later she's like, "Oh, come back to me." But Richard Todd was definitely great, and he actually it made me realize that he would have been a great Horatio Hornblower, because in one of my previous reviews I was thinking who could have been a good young British actor to play a hornblower instead of Gregory Peck, who's American. And Richard Todd, he would have been great for it. Sadly, he wasn't. But and Richard Todd, he was even a good swashbuckler in this. He had some great sword fighting scenes and a great fist fighting scene. So he could do action. So Richard Todd and Bette Davis definitely carried this movie. I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. It had great sets, great costumes. The movie did start out a little bit slow. I'd say about the first 30 to 45 minutes I was starting to think, oh man, this is going to be one of those costume dramas that just doesn't have anything special to it. It was a little bit boring and nothing too special was going on, but it really picked up. It got better and better as the movie went on, and I'm definitely glad to have seen it. And I have some really nice things in this book, The Girl Who Walked Home Alone, to share with you about the movie. So this movie was originally planned to be called, I believe, Sir Walter Raleigh. But eventually they were able to get Bette Davis on to play Queen Elizabeth I, so everything completely changed to where, alright, this movie is going to be about Bette Davis. They're just going to really market it with Bette Davis as the #1 name. And of course they should do that. I mean, Bette Davis was already a legend at the time. She was Hollywood royalty, so... And Richard Todd, he wasn't too bummed out about that. He was actually a good sport. And part of it was just because he had so much respect for Bette at the time. And I wanted to share with you what he had to say. So he messed up one of his lines. He messed up a scene, and this is what he said. "Once when I went up on my lines and forgot something, which I almost never did, and which I personally took as terrible, to let everyone down, she, Bette Davis, came up to me while we were waiting to retake the scene and whispered into my ear, 'I'm on your side.' It's a cherished memory of mine. She also said to me once, 'It's easy for me to imagine my character being in love with yours.' Imagine that," he said. And I thought that was such a cool quote. And you really do see that Bette Davis's character in this movie does have some type of love for Sir Walter Raleigh. And part of that kind of plays into, alright, so on set, Joan Collins, she believed that Bette Davis just absolutely despised her. And people on set also believed the same thing. In fact, someone said, because Joan Collins asked, "Why does Bette Davis hate me so much? Why doesn't she like me?" And someone said to her, "It's obvious. It's the way you look. You're more beautiful than she is." So part of it could have been jealousy, and I can definitely see Bette Davis having a little bit of that jealous edge, because that's just in her character. And there was actually a scene where Joan, her character is putting on boots to the Queen, and she truly believed that Bette Davis was making it more difficult for her to do it. Of course, that may have been the scene, it may have not been, but Joan Collins really thought that Bette Davis just really didn't like her, and Betty had this to say about it: "How absurd! The poor girl was confused." This is years later after the movie. "How absurd! The poor girl was confused. Of course I didn't like her character. She wanted to take Sir Walter away from me, and as Queen Elizabeth I, I resented that. It was essential that an air of hostility exists between us. She was in her costume and her makeup, and I was in mine. If we'd been chummy on the set, some of the softness may have seeped through." So that shows that Bette Davis really got into the character. Even when they stopped filming, she wanted to keep that character between she and Joan Collins' character going. And it's also important to note that the same makeup artist that did her makeup in the movie with Errol Flynn also did the makeup for her in this. The only difference was that the makeup artist shaved 2 more inches off of her head, and Betty had this funny thing to say: "This time, woefully, my hair didn't all grow back. They did it because Queen Elizabeth was losing her hair, and they made sure I did too." And note that the makeup really is amazing. They even shaved her eyebrows, and she definitely looks like she's balding in it. But I'm happy to have reviewed this Bette Davis movie. There's going to be a lot more Bette Davis reviews in the future. But for now, that one was the first, and hopefully in the near future I can do the one with Errol Flynn, especially since it'd be good to kind of compare the two. And in Errol Flynn's autobiography, which is one of my favorite books of all time, he has the funniest story about he and Bette Davis during the making of this movie that I really can't wait to share with you. But that's going to be it for tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. Please hit the follow or subscribe button, comment below, and have a good night.